How is it rocking, Dwayne Nation? Stay here because we are just about to get underway. In the meantime, please like, comment, and subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. We put out weekly sports content, and we want to continue to build up Dwayne Nation and the brand that is Dwayne Sports. Thank you all, and enjoy. Welcome in, Dwayne Nation. This is your host, Justin Paez, alongside Genoa Agudelo, and I'm back in my studio where it all started, back at school. We both are rocking and rolling, headed into the new year of school, but also of fantasy football. We dove into some really interesting picks over the last week and a half with sleepers and breakouts, and today is a more sour kind of episode. We got our bust guys that we do not think are going to perform where their ADP is. It does not mean, straight up that they're going to be, awful and crappy. It's just where they're going now in drafts, our thoughts on their situations, and how we think their 2024 is going to be. It's not up to where what people are thinking right now. So before we do that, though, of course, as always, Genoa, how are you feeling today?
Yo, Dwayne Nation, Justin, I'm feeling great. We're 2 weeks away from the season, Justin. Oh my goodness, we're what, 2-3 Thursdays away from kickoff. I cannot wait, Justin. We have 2 leagues to draft this weekend, Justin. Two leagues this weekend to draft. There's nothing like draft day in fantasy. One of the best days of the year. It's like Christmas for all of us. I'm so excited, Justin. But today, this is a sour video because these are guys that we are not drafting this year. If the person in front of us picks these guys, I am yes, licking my lips, licking my chops, and I'm cheering for joy because these guys will not be on my roster this year, Justin. Maybe they will, but there's some guys that I'm down on, Justin, and I'm curious to see who you're thinking. Let's see if we kind of have the same ideas. We had some similar ideas in our last video. Let's see if we can get some similars on the guys we're really down on.
And as you mentioned, like there's a possibility we get these guys in drafts. Hopefully, this episode, us ranking them a little bit lower than where they're going, we can pull the ADP down just a little bit to where I'm more apt to picking some of these guys. But I hear you saying today's episode's not as sparkly and joyful. Oh my God, we got this guy that's going to win us a league. These guys could possibly lose you your league. So we're going to start at the top. And I think I want to go with this one because I think people are going to be more shocked by it because it's a pretty solidly big name, and it's Lamar Jackson for me from the Baltimore Ravens. Last year obviously he's the MVP. He was a top 3 quarterback last year. Yeah, it's very good. Obviously he's got that rushing upside, which I preach is a super important thing to have for your fantasy quarterback, to have some really high upside. But I come into this year, his ADP is a top 3, top 4 quarterback, and it's just I look at this team, and the biggest thing that I think not many people are talking about is how this O-line has become very deteriorated, losing 3 starting offensive linemen: Kevin Zeitler, Morgan Moses, and Simpson. John Simpson, I believe. 2 go to the Jets. I don't even know where Kevin Zeitler went, but that's 3 starting linemen for the Baltimore Ravens that are out of town. And that now we go to Baltimore where they lose a bunch of their coaching staff, mostly on the defense. And Mike McDonald leaves to Seattle. And yes, you could argue that they're going to pass it more, but I wouldn't say I'm convinced, wholly that Lamar Jackson is the passer we're all dreaming of. He's obviously not a 4,000-yard kind of guy. And they got Derrick Henry now. And I know they're always kind of run heavy, but now when they're near the goal line, I think even though Gus got his double-digit touchdowns, I think Henry's going to be a set it and forget it guy that they're just going to keep giving the rock to. I think this is Derrick Henry's 1 to maybe 2 years left in the NFL. Let's run and run and run as much as we can. And I think it's going to hurt Lamar. And another thing with Lamar, I don't want to say there's deja vu incoming because it's, that's hard to predict. But last time Lamar won his MVP in, 2019, the year later, he comes into training camp thinner, more lightweight. He lost a lot of pounds. He would then proceed those 2 years getting injured. It's just a more, type of player. and it scares me just a little bit, And we come into this year, there's no kind of new ads, new dynamic players coming into this offense, and so it leaves me that there's a cap from what he did last year, but with the decreased offensive line and everything like that, it has me a little worried. And he's going as a top quarterback, where I'd rather wait on some guys. So I have Lamar Jackson as my bust quarterback.
Yeah, Justin, I actually agree with you. First to say, Kevin Zeitler went to Detroit, and he's going to be
Detroit.
great there in the Lions.
Great lanes.
But back to Lamar, Justin, I'm looking at his targets here. It's not looking really good. Obviously, we have the stud at tight end in Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, who was a breakout last year, pretty good tight end. But we look at his wide receivers. Zay Flowers he's good. We'll might be talking about him later. Nelson Aguilar, come on, is Nelson Aguilar? He's still in the league. Wow. Rashad Bateman, who's been a massive disappointment in the league. And then we're looking at Tylan Wallace and Russell Gage and Devontae Walker. Wow. I think he had better targets last year. And personally, for me, Justin, I didn't really think Lamar Jackson was the MVP of the league. I really thought it was Christian McCaffrey who was the MVP of the league. Fantasy wise and regular season, it was all McCaffrey. I mean, come on, really, it was McCaffrey. So I'm going to agree with you. Lamar Jackson has into the camp this year thinner, but we've heard this year in and year out, and Lamar Jackson can only get so thin. I mean, come on now. He's always been a skinny guy with a little bit of chubs, but it's not looking the best for Baltimore this year. I do think they're obviously going to be a great team. They're going to win 9 or 10 games for sure. But yeah, I'm a little down on Baltimore. I do agree with kind of how you point out with Lamar Jackson. And yes, Derrick Henry is there. So that it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to rush the ball. I do think Lamar Jackson does get 500 to 600 yards rushing on the year. But it's very interesting to see when you bring in Derrick Henry. So I agree with you. I mean, there's other players. Justin, I would draft Jared Goff over Lamar Jackson.
Wow. Okay.
Just because of the targets. You have LaPorta and Amon-Ra and Jahmyr Gibbs out of the backfield. And we talked about Jameson Williams. I mean, that fantasy production is better. And even if Kirk Cousins can get things flowing, hey, I mean, maybe something like that can be, statistically be better than what Lamar Jackson could do. So definitely on board with you there.
Yeah, and even with that, like a golf take like that, the value of golf too, where you don't have to jump up into the 4th round or 3rd round to get Lamar, is pretty big. And one last thing I wanted to point out that I found with Lamar, he ended the season quarterback 4, right? Obviously, he was the MVP. Impressive. Through the first 13 weeks, Lamar was actually the quarterback 10. Not super impressive. He had a good stretch near the back half of the season, but it wasn't all, sunshine and rainbows at the first, almost over, 3/4 of the season. So we look at the whole scope of it. Yeah, he ended at quarterback 4 to, kind of outliers near the back end of his season. But the first, 13 weeks was not as pretty. So who do you got at quarterback?
So, Justin, we've just talked about a quarterback who made the AFC Championship this year. We're going to talk about a quarterback that made the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl, and it's Brock Purdy. Justin, we've talked about this a little bit. I am a little disappointed with the 49ers this year. I feel like the Ayuk, every day there's an Ayuk alert. Justin, I think for the past 2 weeks, every day, there has been an Ayuk alert. And literally 2 hours ago, I got an alert that Ayuk has a potential Pittsburgh package going on. So I think the cloud of Ayuk there is causing a lot of uncertainty with the 49ers. Obviously, they drafted Ricky Pearsall out of Florida, who could be good. I think he has, some dynasty value there, Justin. But I'm just really down on the 49ers. I don't know why. They have such a great offense. They're coached by Kyle Shanahan, who's one of the more brilliant minds in football. But I'm for some reason, I have this ick with the 49ers. I don't know what it is. Yesterday, I'm watching the 49ers preseason game, and Brock Purdy is trying to pull a Mahomes here, and he had an awful play where he turns around. He has 2 defenders bull rushing him, and he throws the weirdest pass I've probably ever seen. And I don't know. I think that's setting the tone onto what might be for the 49ers. I think teams like the Rams, in that division, they kind of beat them twice and kind of be maybe the better team. We'll see what the health of Stafford is, but I think the Rams are kind of put together a little bit more better. Even though that Aaron Donald just retired, I think that they had a better draft. And so I kind of feel like the division, the NFC West, is kind of going to catch up to the 49ers. Like I said, there's no doubting that this 49ers offense is fantastic. Christian McCaffrey, who I think should have won MVP, is on that team. But Justin, last year he was healthy the full year, but the rest of his career, he's had knick-knack injuries. He did have a great year in Carolina. I think it was 2019. But, Justin, if Christian McCaffrey were to have a injury-prone season, I think that's going to hurt Purdy in a lot of ways. And there's games that I look at this year, specifically the postseason, right? They were down, I believe, 10 to Green Bay in the divisional. Purdy scraped scraped the game winner to get to the NFC. They were down 24-7 to Detroit in the NFC title game. And then I was thinking about the Super Bowl today, and, they had chances to put the Chiefs away. They were up 10-0 in the second quarter. They go to overtime. They get the ball first. Purdy struggled to convert. Yes, they got a field goal to start overtime, but I don't know. Something about the 49ers, it just gives me the ick. Yes, they start week 1 home with the Jets. Maybe they go 1-0. But I don't know, Justin. There's just something about the 49ers that, I don't know, I'm a little just down on. I've loved the 49ers since they got Kyle Shanahan there. And so I don't think Purdy, it's just looking like one of those Super Bowl, hangover years, kind of like when the Falcons blew a 28-3 lead, and the next year they're kind of on and off. We don't see the same Matt Ryan. So I just feel like maybe that could be a Purdy kind of season where maybe he ends the year on barely 22 touchdowns with like 8 or 9 picks. Nothing too crazy, nothing really good in fantasy wise. So, another game that comes to mind before we go to our next person is that Christmas Day game against the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens it was ugly, Justin. So there's a lot of those top games against top contender teams where Purdy just struggled. Not saying he's a bad quarterback. He's a good quarterback, but fantasy-wise, I'm a little down on him, Justin.
Yeah, you could look at him as he was a pretty, solid, consistent piece in 2023. This year, you're talking about that. I don't like when drama surrounds a team during the whole offseason, even into training camp. It could even bleed into the regular season. It's all ugly there. We've seen the injury history from just about every skill player on that 49ers team. We've seen it with Kittle, McCaffrey, Debo. So there's risks there. The O-line is getting older and worse. Trent Williams battled injuries last year.
Yeah.
And then if you look at it, you mentioned, last time they were in a Super Bowl in 2020, or the end of the 2019 season. The following year, they went 6-10. I know they struggled with injuries, which we're mentioning, but they were last in their division, and things just weren't pretty. And so Purdy has some risk to him and has some doubt creeping into definitely our minds and a lot of people out there. So I like that bust pick at quarterback. Moving to running back, my second bust, my running back bust is DeAndre Swift from the Chicago Bears. Obviously, Swift had that spurt with Philadelphia where he was a top 5 running back for about 5 to 6 weeks. Then obviously the Eagles collapse happens and nobody's good. But he even was falling off to a point before that. So that's already where I was kind of like, Swift is not kind of on my radar. And then he goes to Chicago. So he goes from a top 3 offensive line to about a middle of the pack offensive line. So that draws worries for me. And you look at that backfield, it's not like they have nothing there. They got Khalil Herbert. They got Roshan Johnson. I know they lost Deonta Foreman, but those are 3 guys that Matt Eberflus says he's used a mixture of running backs, last year. So it's not like Swift's getting all the carries right away. He's got a rookie quarterback and an offense that is, most guaranteed to be pass first with all those wide receiver weapons they have. And so it has me very, very concerned. Obviously, Swift has battled injuries throughout his entire career. And he's just been bouncing through teams, and it just makes me kind of worried. I know they paid pretty good capital to bring him in, 3-year, $24 million. That I'd be happy for DeAndre himself. But for fantasy, I have some clear worries about what he could do this season.
Well, here's the thing, Justin. I've loved DeAndre Swift ever since he came out of the University of Georgia. He's always been a solid little speed back. He's really good in Detroit, even though he shared a year with Jamal Williams, who I think he led the league in touchdowns that year. That's right. But here's the thing. You make a point with the depth chart in Chicago. It's not like they have a bunch of nobodies. Khalil Herbert has been solid as they come as a running back, as well as Roshan Johnson, who in his rookie year last year, he had a weird injury that kept him out 5 to 6 weeks, I believe, which then opened up the opportunity for Foreman to have a good couple weeks. But I've always felt like Chicago has always wanted to involve Roschon Johnson as long as he's been healthy. So I feel like this year, with their number one pick quarterback in Caleb Williams, they have a star offense, I do think they're going to want to involve Roschon Johnson a lot on third down situations, even with Khalil Herbert. So that's going to be something that Matt Eberflus and the coaching staff is going to have to figure out on what they're going to do on third downs. But the most definite thing that I can tell you, Justin, is I don't think we'll see DeAndre Swift at all in any third down situations. Even though he could be a great receiver out of the running back, so out of the backfield. So maybe it's going to be weird how they implement these three running backs. Because like I said,
Right.
Chicago's always wanted to involve Roschon Johnson. They had high hopes when they drafted him, in 2023. And so, Khalil Herbert is really solid. He's capable of getting you 100 yards. He's also capable of getting 1 to 2 goal line touchdowns. And so that's going to rob DeAndre Swift. So it's going to be very interesting to see. Also, this team could be a pass-heavy offense because they have Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, and then they have DJ Moore, who's hitting his prime as a wide receiver. And Caleb Williams has been spectacular this preseason. He's made some Mahomey-like plays. And so maybe they're the team that hardly runs the ball, gives all three of the running backs a combined 20 carries. So that's something to be concerned about. I do like Swift's upside as the best receiver at running back, but Justin, there's 3 solid receivers here, along with Cole Kmet, who's a solid tight end. So I could see why there is some cause for concern for DeAndre Swift, but he is ultra talented, in my opinion. It would have been so sweet, though, to see a backfield with no Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson, like I said, a running back that they want to have involved. So I can sort of see the production being very low. We're kind of questioning week 6 or week 7. Like, dude, where's DeAndre Swift? Like, this is crazy. And so the talent is there, Justin. 100% the talent's there. He's still very of age there. I think he's 25, which isn't bad. So I can understand that maybe there's some cause for concern there.
Yeah, and I mean, as you mentioned, Swift is a very good receiving back. He has those capabilities. Khalil Herbert and Roschon also do. It's not like one of those situations where it's like Jamal Williams, where it's like all he's going to contribute is on the ground, and we're going to give Swift all the catches out of the backfield. Khalil Herbert could be in and getting those catches as well as Roschon. And then I went and jumped and looked at their ADP right now. Swift's going as the RB21 over guys like Zamir White, Najee Harris, Raheem Mostert, a guy I really like in Brian Robinson and Zach Moss. And so I would much rather wait an extra round for some of those guys. So that's where I have it. Swift, what do you got at running back?
I have Tony Pollard. Now, here's the biggest elephant in the room, Justin. 2 years ago, we were very, he was the Cinderella of fantasy, taking over for Ezekiel Elliott. It was kind of like 2 years in the making. And then this past year, last year in 2023, he is the lead guy. Guys like Rico Dowdle or Deuce Vaughn, they don't really hold any intimidation there. But this year he's going to be sharing carries with Tajay Spears. And Tajay Spears, there were some times I had Derrick Henry in one of our main leagues, Justin. There was times where Tajay Spears had good games. He had receiving touchdowns, rushing touchdowns. It sort of seemed like every time the Titans were kind of down 7 or more, Derrick Henry wasn't really in the game. It was Tajay Spears. Now they do have a new coaching staff, which I would like to get into. Brian Callahan, Justin, historically has always been with one running back. He had Mixon for all those many years and hardly ever went to the backups. And so I kind of feel like this year, Brian Callahan, between the first couple weeks of the season, he's gonna commit to one running back. That's what I think. I think he's gonna be with one running back. If it's Tony Pollard, great. But if it's Tajay Spears, and that defeats the purpose of Pollard. Another thing that I'd like to mention, this is going to be a pass-heavy team. When Brian Callahan was in Cincinnati, he was the guy that was able to create plays for Joe Burrow to get to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, who is on this team, Justin, who's now a Tennessee Titan. So you look at this team now, they have Calvin Ridley, who wants to prove that he is worth that major contract he just signed this offseason. DeAndre Hopkins, who this will be his 10th or 11th season in the league. He's also, I think he's going to have a great year with Will Levis. And Tyler Boyd, who is solid as they come. Treylon Burks, I mentioned, he might be one of the best wide receiver 4s in the league. So I do kind of like Tennessee to be more of a pass-heavy offense and a division with C.J. Stroud in that offense and Anthony Richardson in that offense And T-Law and the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're going to be a pass-heavy team, I believe. And so, they're going to want to keep up with a lot of these teams here. And I feel like the running game is going to be a little bit pushed to the side there, which leaves Tajay Spears or Tony Pollard kind of left in the dust. And I do think Tajay Spears is the better receiving running back. Obviously, Pollard had some good receiving games in Dallas, but it's tough to see them really go with the running back committee here. And even if they do, that's going to be very frustrating with Tony Pollard. And Justin, I just don't see a scenario where when we get to the fantasy playoffs and the championship, that Tony Pollard is a guy that we're starting in and week out. I don't see a guy like, if I'm in the championship, it's going to be tough for me to put in Pollard. Obviously there's going to be other studs by the end of the season this year, and I don't think Pollard's going to be one of them. I just don't envision it happening. I think Tajay Spears is more of the homegrown guy, the Tennessee guy, the next in line for Tennessee. Historically, the Titans have had great running backs: Eddie George, Derrick Henry, Chris Johnson. And I think Tajay Spears is going to want to fit in that mold as that next Tennessee running back. And so I just don't see Tony Pollard being that guy.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. And I think the guy that I just talked about, they have some parallels to them, joining new teams, leaving a roster and an opportunity where they had a better offensive line. They had more opportunities. They have a RB in the backfield that is almost just as competent as them, in which we even think Spears is better. Spears has looked really good. He's gotten goal line touches in the preseason. And so Pollard does have me very worried. Will Levis, I have him as, a breakout candidate for my first, but, there's possibilities that it doesn't work out. Maybe he's not the quarterback we think he is. And that would just about ruin all of Pollard's fantasy value, because I don't see a lot of it coming from on the ground. So, I think that's a good pick there. At wide receiver, moving to the next position, I have, unfortunately, because I am a Texans fan, but I have Stefon Diggs, wide receiver for the Houston Texans, traded from Buffalo to H-Town, but he joins just the most crowded, most talented wide receiver room in the NFL with Tank Dell, Nico Collins. Dalton Schultz is going to get you some catches. Joe Mixon's going to get you some catches. Don't forget about maybe some Noah Brown. John Mechie's had a good preseason. It's just been too much for me to want to dive into his ADP. Now, I'm not saying he's a, completely washed player that has nothing left to give. It's just, he's going way too early in drafts. I'd rather wait an extra round and a half to get Tank Dell on my team. Diggs is going over guys like Pittman, who's going to be the lead target guy on his team, and Malik Neighbors I'd even go. And we talked about how much I love Devonta Smith. So there's just guys around his area later and later than where he's going that I'd rather jump on. And it's just Diggs, just say in the possibility that he has lost a step, like we saw last year. Obviously, let me look at where I have here on the stats here. I had Diggs. He was the wide receiver 56 from weeks 10 to 18 last year.
Yeah, it was ugly at the end.
The Bills just phased him out of the offense, and they weren't, too sorry for it. The offense didn't take major dips. That was actually when they went on a major win streak. So, and another thing too, Diggs, you could argue, yes, maybe obviously his track record is better than any Texans wide receiver, but C.J. Stroud has that chemistry with all the players on the team from last year. All those guys come back, and now they're bringing in an older vet, that didn't play very well last year, and I have major worries, and especially where he's going, I can't pick him there.
Yeah, I'm there with you a little bit. It hurts me as a Texans fan. I do think there's just a lot of mouths to feed, of course. And I think maybe Nico Collins or Tank Dell is kind of going to emerge the role as like the alpha at wide receiver. But CJ Stroud is such a talented quarterback. You don't really know who he's throwing to. Don't forget about the tight ends there, and Dalton Schultz and Brevin Jordan, who are going to be getting Stroud's attention there in the red zone. I do think maybe Stefon Diggs is more of a back half of the season kind of guy. Okay. We're thinking weeks 7 to 10. Maybe he has more breakout games. I do think it's gonna take some time for him. Well, I don't want to say it's gonna take some time for him to get acclimated in the offense. There's going to be some games where maybe you'll have 20, 30 yards, a couple catches. And so I understand it. The talent's there. The quarterback is there. It's just a matter of who and when. There's just so many mouths to feed. So I can sort of understand if maybe he's kind of on the down this year. He is older. And there's a lot of fresh legs there in Houston. So I hope not. I'm a Texans fan. I hope everybody on the team gets 1,000 yards, especially when the playoffs start. I hope that Stefon Diggs can get 20 touchdowns, win us a Super Bowl. So, yeah, Justin, maybe I hope that Stefon Diggs doesn't have a big year, but when the playoffs start in January, I hope Stefon Diggs can torch every DB and score a million touchdowns, and the Texans win everything in the Super Bowl. So, yeah, Justin, I'm really hoping that that Stefon Diggs just cools it a little bit in the regular season. The Texans clinch the playoffs, just smoke every DB and just win a Super Bowl. Just win a Super Bowl.
Yes, I will love it, and I will draft him if I knew that were the case.
He'd be the greatest wide receiver ever, Justin.
Yeah.
Better than Jerry Rice. I'll take Stefon Diggs if he wins the Super Bowl.
Funny. I mean, with Diggs though, it's just like he's still a good wide receiver. I mean, we've seen it. He was a top 10 wide receiver since he stepped onto a football field, and it's just that they're going to be inconsistent too. Just about all Texans wide receivers. I see it. I see a Diggs game. He's going to get a 130, 2-touchdown game, and we're going to be like, wow, dang. And the next game, you'll be like, why did he get 3 catches and for 45 yards, you know?
Yeah.
It's just because there is too many mouths to feed, too many dogs in the house, too much treasure in the treasure chest kind of thing. So that's what I have there for Stefon Diggs. What do you have at wide receiver?
I have Zay Flowers. Now, Justin, you and I have our, top 30 wide receivers, and we do not have Zay Flowers in it at all. A guy who's listed as the #1 wide receiver, playing in a top 3 AFC team with the reigning MVP. It's shocking that we're not having high hopes for Zay Flowers. A play that comes to mind is when he was at the goal line at the AFC Championship and fumbled, gave the Chiefs all the momentum, Justin. And I'm drafting guys like Michael Pittman. I'm drafting, of course, DJ Moore, Amari Cooper, Malik Neighbors, and Justin, Carolina's newest wide receiver, and Deontay Johnson. I think I might take him over Zay Flowers, Justin. I don't know. We just talked about Lamar Jackson. We're not really sure what to expect. The passing, I think that last year they had better wide receivers with the older Odell Beckham Jr. And this year it's just not looking so good for Zay Flowers. I sort of wish they drafted a guy like Ricky Pearsall or something. I mean, the Baltimore Ravens really just hate adding wide receiver talent. At least the Chiefs were able to draft Worthy and Hollywood and sign Hollywood Brown. The Ravens they're reluctant to do that, and it hurts my heart when you have a star quarterback who's just won the MVP. And so I don't know if I even want to. Maybe I think Zay Flowers makes my top 35. I don't think I won't leave him off a top 40. But Justin, here's a stat that you helped scope out for me. Without Mark Andrews, he got hurt in the middle of the season. I think he tore his fibula. Without that, once Mark Andrews got hurt, he was a wide receiver 12, which is okay. But we're assuming Mark Andrews is going to be there. When he's there, he was the wide receiver 29. So that's not really good when you have a star quarterback who won the MVP. We're hoping Mark Andrews plays the whole year. So if that's the case with Isaiah Likely, who broke out last year, where does that leave a guy like Zay Flowers? You know what I'm saying? And we get reports from John Harbaugh saying, "Oh, this is Rashawn Bateman's breakout year." Like, okay, so if that's the case, where does that really leave Zay Flowers, right? So I'm not really Zay Flowers is going to have a good season, but it's just a guy to keep on the lookout. I think there's better talent to look at when we get around 5 or 6 is kind of where he's going. So we'll see, but a little down on the Ravens offense.
Yeah,
even though they do have Derrick Henry, but yeah.
It's funny. Our breakouts, we were kind of linked on the same wavelength. You had Kirk, I had Kyle Pitts. Now in Bust, I had Lamar, and you have Zay Flowers. Yeah. So we're kind of on that same side of. We think that this offense is going to be a little less powerful than usual. You mentioned that stat, Mark Andrews, when he was out, Zay Flowers wide receiver 12, which is it's pretty impressive. In 12 team leagues, that would be a wide receiver 1 or a low end wide receiver 2. I mean, a high end wide receiver 2 or low end wide receiver 1. But then without Andrews, he was wide receiver 29, and he's going above that right now in drafts. So it has me worried there. And you mentioned Rashad Bateman. Not that I believe this hype that's been, oozing out of John Harbaugh this offseason and training camp that Bateman's due for a breakout year. If that is the case, though, Bateman is changed his ways and is now a good wide receiver somehow. That's going to knock down Zay Flowers even more. So I agree. Zay Flowers is a bust. Sorry, Ravens fans. I know this is not the episode you wish you had heard, but that's how it is. But going to tight end, I know I already talked about how it's picking a Texan as a bust broke my heart, but this player is not a Texan, but it breaks my heart to put him here because I had him in our big league. He took the league by storm. He was a rookie that just like I'll give it to my dad. He picked him. He was all behind him, and
Don't
it's
do
just
it.
I have to do it just because he's going way too high in drafts. His touchdown production is due for regression, and it is Sam LaPorta from the
Oh,
Detroit Lions. This guy is uber talented. He surprised everybody. Rookie tight ends never hit. They've only hit a couple of times, not even a handful of times. And so I'm just like, and I had him week in and week out. He would score me a touchdown, I'd be happy. He was a really consistent piece. Obviously, the tight end won. Now he's going in the third round, heading into a season where he had 10 touchdowns. He had right under 1,000 yards. But let me give you this stat here real quick. No tight end in the history of the NFL who had under 1,000 receiving yards, but 10 touchdowns or more, repeated that level of fantasy outputs, that following season. So he's due for clear regression. They have, obviously he's not the number one target in the offense. You could argue he is the number two. And it obviously, I think he's a good tight end. But if you look at the rest of these tight ends down the list, there's very good chances that I could see Kincaid, Trey McBride. If Ayuk gets traded, I could see a George Kittle. I could see some names hop him. And even Travis Kelce, who's going behind him right now in fantasy football drafts. Kelsey's been. I don't think Kelsey's just some washed guy now. He
no.
had a couple games where he missed due to injury, and yes, it was an underwhelming season. But LaPorta's going over all of them, and as much as I love him because he was a fantasy darling last year, I can't spend that kind of dollar going that high. Now, if he falls, I know we got a week till our main drafts, which not enough time. But if he can fall 10 spots, that'll be the perfect spot for me to take him in drafts.
Wow, what a spicy take. Sam LaPorta. Justin, I've done a couple mock drafts with friends. I've done mock drafts on my own. LaPorta, he doesn't make it past the third round, which is crazy. People are taking him in the second. That's pretty wild. And there's going to be people in our drafts this weekend that might take him in the second or third. I do agree with the Travis Kelce take. I do think he had a little bit of a down year, but the Chiefs won a three-peat. I have Mahomes winning the MVP in dominant fashion. I'm thinking 50 to 52 touchdowns. Kelce's going to have a good say in that. This might be his last year or two in the league. I think we're sort of, with his brother who just retired, he's going to have a better season. So I do think that he'll have a better year than LaPorta. I just think LaPorta does have a top 5 finish. I think he's established himself as a thing. But, Justin, everybody knows about LaPorta now, Justin. And so I feel like maybe that, the league is going to adapt to that because he had such a breakout year where we didn't even see that coming. And last year, we were like, LaPorta, who? Puka, who? So, I'm not saying Puka's going to have a down year. But, look, I do see a little bit of regression. I still think he has a great season for sure. I do think he's there. But, yeah, I can see why you might have some doubts on LaPorta. I think he has ultra talented season, though. But a little bit of a step back than what he had for sure, though.
Yeah. All right, top us off.
Yeah, for me, it'll be another guy who had a pretty good 2023. It's Evan Engram. Now, Justin, when Trevor Lawrence got drafted, we had this impression that he was going to be a generational quarterback. Oh, this guy's the next Peyton Manning. He's going to save the Jaguars. But, Justin, they had the divisional lead all year, and they let my Houston Texans catch up as well as the Indianapolis Colts. something about Trevor Lawrence uh, makes me put him at a B tier quarterback. He's hasn't really gotten it done. He's had some good games, and there's some games where you're just like, why did the Jags get this guy again? And so I think that's going to play in a little bit to how Evan Engram plays out. He had one of the most quiet tight end 2 seasons in 2023. Looking at his stats here, Justin, he has not gone over 5 touchdowns in his career with Jacksonville. His whole career, his career high in touchdowns was 6 his rookie year with the Giants. And he hasn't ever gone over 1,000 yards. That's very concerning, Justin. Very concerning. He did play all 17 games last year. And the Jaguars, I feel like they took a little bit of a step back, losing Ridley. Yes, they drafted Brian Thomas, who I like this year. So I'm not really sure who's going to be Trevor's go-to guy. Maybe Brian Thomas, maybe Gabe Davis, maybe Christian Kirk. But I feel like it's just one of those things where I can't really trust Evan Engram as a tight end. I feel like there's a little bit more value out there. Well, last week or a week ago, we talked about Hunter Henry. I feel like Hunter Henry's ceiling is a little bit better. Yes, that sounds weird to say. I just feel like Evan Engram, he's not consistent. He gets a lot of catches, right? He had 114 last year. But like I said, a tight end that doesn't get over 1,000 yards, who doesn't get over 5 touchdowns, a little concerning there. So that's something just to be on the lookout there. I'm not drafting Evan Engram until like the 10th or 11th round. That's just me. I feel like there's a lot more value at the tight end position. So Evan Ingram's a guy to just beware on bust alert this year. Jacksonville, the Jacksonville offense, they're on and off. They have a good week there, and then they have 2 bad weeks. They have a good week, and they have 3 bad weeks. So you never know what you're going to get out of Trevor Lawrence. Hopefully this could be his breakout year. But we'll see what happens. But Evan Ingram's a guy who might be getting up there in age. He will be 30 by the time the season starts. Here in a week, he'll be 30. In a week or two, he'll be 30. So that's something to be on the lookout for. So, just saying.
Yeah, for me personally, it's a little tough to throw him in the bus due to just all those targets in PPR leagues. He's gonna be interesting to grab. But yeah, they lose Ridley, which you're like, okay, maybe more targets for Ingram, but then they sub it in with Brian Thomas and Gabe Davis, both who are very good red zone targets.
Yeah.
Brian Thomas led the SEC in touchdowns last season, and Gabe Davis touchdowns is just all about what he's good for. So there's that. Kirk is a very reliable option as well, and then there's Evan Engram. So there's questionable in an offense that's already kind of questionable to be in a possible 4th target. That has me a little worried. The targets is what keeps me kind of sticking in there. He had 114 catches, which is just kind of outlandish. So an outlier season for him, but he's going to be 30, as you mentioned. And the O-line is about even. They didn't really lose or gain anything. So I see what you did. I see it. I like it. And wow, I think we had the tight end 1 and 2 in half PPR leagues as bust for 2024.
Yeah.
So that's spicy for you, but that is our bust. We got Evan Engram and Sam LaPorta and Stefon Diggs and Zay Flowers, and then Lamar Jackson and Brock Purdy. Gosh, it's just so many good players from last year. Okay,
Yeah.
doesn't mean you need to buy into it, but and Swift and Pollard. It's just there's some guys that you pick them if you want to, but there's some serious concerns around these guys, especially their ADPs. That's where I kind of I buy in the most to having concern for them. It's just they're going really high in drafts that it's too rich for my blood kind of thing. So that is our bust episode. See, I'm making it right under 40 minutes. Pretty good. With our sad, though, will come the happy. Our next episode is going to be league winners, kind of our my guys for the 2024 season. 4 guys from each of us that we really believe needs to be on your roster and could really help you down the stretch as well as throughout. And give yourself a fantasy football trophy or a belt or a ring or some sweet hardcore cash. So whatever you want, come and stay tuned for our league winners. But this episode, as you guys are listening now, is also just about as much important. You need to stay away from guys that aren't going to help your team. So thanks for listening, guys. As always, like, comment, subscribe, share with friends. We need to continue to bring up the Dwayne Sports Podcast and build Dwayne Nation. So yeah, and as always, send us out, man.
Dwayne Nation, oh man, what a great episode. It's Justin, we're glad to get past this one. The next episode, I'm so excited to talk about. There's a guy in there at the running back position that I really can't wait to talk about, Justin. And so Dwayne Nation, stay tuned, man. We love you guys. Hey, the season is 2 weeks away, man. We're so excited to just, oh man, fantasy and regular season. Who's going to be that next team? Who's going to be that next breakout guy? Who's going to be the league winner, Justin? So excited, yeah. And guys, definitely tune in. Keep up with us here at Dewey Nation. We love you guys. We love doing this content. And as always, peace.
Peace.